Okay. Hi, guys. So wonderful to see everyone here. Lots of familiar faces. Why are we here? Well, we're here because I work with a magnificent team at Houdini, and we're a small team compared to many of our colleagues in the business, in the outdoor industry. So we have a lot of hard work to transform ourselves into something that we call business within planetary boundaries. And I must say, apart from being hard work, it's also the biggest adventure of my lifetime, I think. I think maybe we can all consider the fact that this is the adventure we need to take and embrace it with gratitude and bold thinking and bold action. Anyways, we're trying our best, and to know if we're on track towards what we want to achieve, we, a few years ago, in 2015, decided to assess our company and understand the Earth system that we want to partner up with. And how do we do that? We needed to do it with experts, so we connected with the Stockholm Resilience Center. And since we have been working and learning and exploring together, and we launched the first assessment in 2018, and since there's been a dramatic change in the world in so many ways, and it seems like it's only accelerating, but anyways, now we have a second report that we want to share with you. And report is one thing, gathering here in a vibrant place like Fotografiska, meeting wonderful people and connecting and expanding perspectives even more. I hope that's the intention of the evening anyways, having fun, meeting new guys, old friends as well, and expanding perspectives. And on our journey, we've had the great pleasure of working with people who've shared so much knowledge and insight and so much cross-pollination that have been and is essential for us on the journey ahead. So we maybe hope that we will share that with you as well tonight with a talk among some of our greatest companions on the journey. There are many, but a few of them. Anyways, what else did I have to? We're going to speak about. We're going to be here about an hour, speaking and sharing and having a talk, and then I hope you're welcome to stay. There's a wonderful exhibition downstairs called Human that I hope that everybody will be able to check out before you leave. There's some drinks and food from Sopköket. Thanks. A wonderful partner of ours, and then there's other partners here. Albaeco, of course, who helped us do the reports and learning along the way. One Day Interact, who's helped us doing some infographics and communications tools that hopefully will help us, compared to the first report, enable much more people to embrace the science and take on the magnificent journey of moving towards business within planetary boundaries. And with that, did I forget something? No, I don't think so. And then I want to introduce a hero and somebody who's creating ripples around the world and sharing some knowledge and wisdom with us tonight. Johan Rockström, who unfortunately is not with us here in person, but you're in Potsdam. Johan, so great to see you on screen. Thanks for taking the time. And please share your perspectives on the status of the planet.
Thanks, Eva, and so fantastic to connect, at least virtually, with you. Let me start by congratulating Houdini and all the colleagues. I just want to emphasize from the very beginning that you are not only a iconic company in the world, you are the iconic company in the world, integrating a planetary boundary framework, a full Earth system framework, right at the heart of the business model, out-competing companies like Unilever and Walmart and IKEA and H&M and many others who take planetary boundary science seriously, but have not gone as far as really building it into the heart of the business model as you are doing. So you are a reference point for the world, and I congratulate you for that. I'm here sharing my slides. I wanted to just give you a very quick update of where we are in terms of the planetary boundary science and where we're heading into the future, and where the biggest challenges are in terms of providing even more justification for the brilliant work that how fundamental that is. So, three entry points that brings us to why we need business within planetary boundaries. The number one is that we have unequivocal evidence that we are deep into the Anthropocene. We're now hitting the ceiling of hardwired processes that regulate the stability, the resilience, and the life support for the entire Earth system. And this is now at a stage that is making us really nervous. I could load you with so much data. I won't do that. Just to show you one graph that really makes us scientists very, very nervous today. And it's, of course, the ocean. What you see here is surface temperature of the ocean over the past 50 years, gradually getting warmer and warmer and warmer. You see the lines rising step by step, well represented in the climate models. And then suddenly, the highest red line there is 2023. This is moving straight off the charts. Several sigma events outside of the variability that we've caused as human-induced warming over the past 50 years, and we cannot explain it. And then comes 2024, the purple line you see furthest to the left there, and we go even further off the chart. The ocean's biogeophysics is misbehaving, and we cannot explain it. This is potentially a really important sign, a warning sign of us losing resilience in the Earth system, which has all to do with the planetary boundaries. The second part of the evidence that one has to have a very strong handle on to guide business within the safe operating space on Earth is that tipping points are hardwired. And I'm sure you're aware of this. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has now confirmed climate tipping element systems, the large biophysical systems that regulate and contribute to the stability of the climate system, but which also can be irreversibly shifted towards states that go from dampening warming to self-amplifying warming if we push them too far. And here you have the most recent science on the list of these tipping element systems. There are 16 of them, and what you see here in this red uncertainty range is the scientific assessments today, which of course shows that we have still a very high degree of uncertainty. On the x-axis you have global warming in temperature degrees Celsius. What I want you only to focus on is the top 5 number of tipping elements which fall with their average likelihood of crossing tipping points between 1 and 2 degrees Celsius. And just look at this result. The Greenland ice sheet, the West Antarctic ice sheet, all the tropical coral reef systems, livelihoods of over 300 million people, abrupt thawing of permafrost, and the Labrador Sea Current are all falling within this likely crossing of tipping points already at 1.5 degrees Celsius. This leads to two conclusions. One is that the planetary boundary science on climate is correct because we put the boundary precautionary slightly below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And number two, the Paris Agreement's agreement, the legally binding 1.5 degrees Celsius, is not a target, it's not a goal, it is a physical limit. There is so much scientific evidence today that we cannot allow ourselves to go beyond 1.5. Just these two ice sheets represent 10 meter sea level rise. We're talking about unstoppable changes that are likely to be triggered at temperatures that we're rushing towards already today. As you know, last year we touched on 1.5, we reached 1.48. That is not a global mean surface temperature being breached. We are at the 10-year average of 1.2, but we're moving very rapidly towards 1.5. On tipping points, you also know that we are getting increasing evidence that these are coupled cascade systems. So 4 of the tipping elements show more and more evidence of being interconnected in cascades. The Greenland ice sheet, when it melts faster and faster, cools down the surface temperature in the North Atlantic, which slows down the AMOC, the Gulf Stream system,
which then pushes the monsoon system further south, which can explain why we get more forest dieback and forest over another tipping element, the Amazon rainforest. But when this system slows down, it also means that warm saline water gets stuck in the Southern Ocean, which can explain why another tipping element, the West Antarctic ice sheet, is melting faster than expected. So what's happening in the Arctic is connected via tipping elements to Antarctica. The entire system is interconnected and more sensitive than we had thought. I just came back from Brazil, talking to climate scientists and ecologists, Carlos Nobres and colleagues. Their conclusion is that the Amazon rainforest is very close to a tipping point, much, much closer than we climate scientists has assessed. We actually put the Amazon rainforest in this graph you see here. If you look at the Amazon rainforest, which is fourth from the bottom, the average risk is between 3 and 4 degrees Celsius. Well, the Brazilian ecologist tells us that that is a wrong assessment because it's, of course, not only temperature that will risk knocking over the Amazon, it's also loss of biodiversity, it's loss of forest, it is land system change, and it's hydrology change. It is 4 planetary boundaries. And that the conclusion is that we're very, very close to a tipping point because all of these boundaries are in the red. So there you have at the heart why we need business within planetary boundaries. But just to put really the deep, deep moral responsibility we have to a final punchline is that the corridor of life for businesses to thrive, for humanity to thrive, and for an equitable future for humanity in the future, the corridor of life is very narrow. And let me just show you the latest science here, which actually is the fundamental floor for the planetary boundary science, and it goes as follows. Here you have the last 400,000 years. It's the journey of planet Earth, oscillating between 100,000 years of deep ice ages and short interglacial periods. And here you have the broad corridor of life. Basically, the last 3 million years, we've never exceeded 2 degrees Celsius, the warmest point on Earth, and deep ice age, -5. Isn't that extraordinary? Everything we know in terms of human lives and nature we love, the biosphere we all depend on, all the species on Earth, have basically settled down in the Earth that we know within this very narrow life corridor. +2, -5. But it goes even further than that. We leave the last ice age some 18,000 years ago and enter an even more narrow phase of this life corridor, the Holocene. The last 12,000 years, a very, very narrow 14 degrees Celsius ±1 degree. Can you imagine? We are already today outside of the life corridor that we have experienced since we left the last ice age. And it's so important because we barely exit the last ice age and we go through the Neolithic Revolution, transitioning from hunters and gatherers, a few million people on Earth living in caves, to become farmers and evolve toward the civilizational journey as we know it. And here we have Houdini celebrating its second planetary boundary report in the modern globalized world as we know it. That is the reality. That is why we use the Holocene as the reference point for our desired planet. It's our Garden of Eden. It's the planet we depend on. Now we're shooting ourselves out of this range. This is the IPCC assessments of the best future we have. Can you imagine? We've now, unfortunately, come to a point where we have breached so many planetary boundaries that we can no longer reach 1.5 by simply holding the line entirely. The only pathway we have today, the best we can offer humanity, is what you see on the screen here. That is to hold 1.5, yes, by the end of this century, 2100 is the x-axis here, after a period of overshoot. So, dear friends, buckle up, because we touched 1.5 last year. We'll probably go down again for a few years because we go now into a La Nina phase. But IPCC models show that we will be breaching the planetary boundary on 1.5 somewhere, as you see on this graph, between 2030 and 2035. We then enter a period of 30 to 40 years overshoot between 0.1 and 0.3 degrees Celsius. That will be a very, very scary period. Extreme events will increase. That we know for certain. Droughts, floods, heat waves, reinforced hurricanes, fires. That is a is 100% certainty. The big question mark is, will the tipping elements survive? Will they be able to cope with this period of overshoot? We don't know, in all honesty. Tropical coral reef systems are probably unlikely to cope. The others, we are doing a lot of research today, and most science shows that they can cope with a limited period of overshoot. We have to do everything we can to come back at a safe landing in a manageable future of 1.5. But why would the planet go back? Well, dear friends, there's only one answer. It is to come back within all the planetary boundaries. That is why we need the planetary boundaries, because all the science shows that we're so deep into the Anthropocene, tipping points are for real, the Holocene is our reference point, we're in overshoot mode, we now need to come back into the safe operating space for all the 9 planetary boundaries that regulate the stability, the resilience, the life support for humanity. 6 of the 9 boundaries are outside of the safe space. That's what you see here on the screen. It's not only climate, it's biodiversity, it's land system change, it's freshwater use, it's overloading of nitrogen, phosphorus, and its novel entities. Houdini is the only company in the world that is taking this all the way into the heart of business. We are now, as scientists, taking this up to a further level to feed Houdini and actors like Houdini in the world with a planetary boundary health check, not every 7th year, which is what we've been doing over the past 15 years. We've only done 3 scientific updates, which informs companies like Houdini. Now we'll be doing a health check every year. Here are all the control variables. You're measuring against them. We're now working on the precision on them, running Earth system models, tipping point science to give you even better quantifications. And we're now ramping this up in a planetary boundary health check to be delivered to humanity every year as a global common public good, working with Earth system scientists, but also Earth observation satellite-based measurement institutions, so that we can get global numbers, yes, for sure, but also high-resolution maps. The dream is at real time to create a control room, or called a situation room, or a Bloomberg portal for dashboarding the development for the global economy within planetary boundaries. So Eva, in the next year, I hope that we'll be able to serve you at Houdini with even more precise science for the next step in our transformative journey towards a safe landing within planetary boundaries. That's what is at stake. It is existential. Now is the time to start scaling, and I love the work done by Houdini to really get the science business interface to be operational, and you should really be proud of what you're doing. Thank you so much, and back to you, Eva.
Thank you so much, Johan, for that, giving us the state of the world. And I'm Malva, a colleague of Eva. And I think with this information, it's obvious, it's important that we are working with all of the planetary boundaries within a holistic view. And that's what we have been doing together with Albaeco. And we wanted to bring you through the work that we have been doing with this planetary boundaries assessment. So starting with Houdini, we are an outdoor company based just by the water here, where we want to create maximum experience for our users. We want to be out there in the nature, and with inspiration and with the nature as a blueprint, we want to do this with 0 impact and even go beyond. How can we be a positive and regenerative force in society? We have been designing for circularity since 2001, and circularity meaning materials, fibers, products, but also knowledge sharing and how we want to bring this to life. And so circularity could also be designing for life, designing for prosperous life and designing for lives that you want to live. But we are doing this in an industry. The textile industry is a 3 billion take, make, waste industry where 100 billion garments are produced globally each year, and 60% end up in landfill within the first year. And that's a crazy number.
And that's why it's so important for us to have the planetary boundaries as our guide, to see how do we not only have an effect on CO2, but how can we, as Houdini, as a company, serve within the safe operating space of the planetary boundaries. And that's what we have been doing with the first report with Albaeco in 2018, and now today with the new report.
And so Albaeco, we are an independent organization. We do research, communications, educations, and we are sustainability consultants. And in our work, we often depart from the planetary boundaries as it's a good framework for a holistic view on the environmental aspects of sustainability. And so what have we been doing? When looking at the impacts of a company, maybe you've heard of the scopes that you should include in your analysis. And in our first analysis, we looked more at scope 1, 2, and 3. We looked at the direct impact, and we tried to look at suppliers and all this supply chain through. And in this last report, we've expanded our view to also include the fourth scope that you may or may not have heard of, and sometimes is referred to as scope X, which is what you do beyond your value chain, what you do to influence the world, to influence your buyers, your consumers, your customers, to make a change there.
And for us at Houdini, we have to look at this holistic view, we have an impact formula that is taking this into perspective. So looking at P as the product, what materials do we have, how is it produced, but also expanding into volume, how much are we producing, but also what wardrobes are we enabling to our users, and also life. The lifestyle is also an important part of the impact. So this is how we view that Houdini's whole impact is looking.
So if we break that down, we start with looking at the P, which we've done in this analysis in a few ways. And
exactly. So we have been looking at, okay, at Houdini, we want to design products with monomaterials in the natural loop, but also in the synthetic loop that can be recycled again and again. We're also working with clean chemistry. And in the report, we could see how are we affecting then all of these boundaries with these design methods.
So looking at what sort of impact this causes, one way to go about it that's been used a lot is looking at life cycle assessment, LCA data. And we've done that to some extent in the report, but it's a complex and complicated thing to do because it's hard to find reliable data that's good enough and that sort of matches up to the planetary boundaries and the proxies that we want to look at for impact. So we've also expanded and done quite a lot of qualitative assessments because we see that in the qualitative assessments, we capture aspects that we don't necessarily capture in the numbers, at least not yet. And those aspects are crucial and they're really important to act on now. And we think that by doing that analysis thoroughly, we can find ways of doing things generally right, rather than focusing in too much on finding specific numbers that maybe measure the wrong thing and lead us in the wrong direction. So we've looked a lot at that. And one thing that you come up against a lot in the products and materials sort of realm of trying to make choices is naturals or synthetics. And both types of fibers have impacts on all of the planetary boundaries. But our main take home is that we need at this point to steer away from fossil resource use. And we need to minimize plastic pollution. So the fibers that we choose, that we should work more with, are those that take us on that direction. Okay, and then we have the next part of the formula.
Yes.
V.
So going beyond the product, looking at the volume. At Houdini, we want to create these wearable multi-tools that you can use for various different activities or in your daily life. We're also looking at other business models. So how can we support life that you can live large with less? How can you maybe rent or subscribe? And we have been a little bit curious, so how much is actually our garments used? So we asked our community in a survey to see how much is this loved power hoodie used, for example. And we could see that it's used in average 1,287 times over a 10-year period. And if you look at the global scale, that's 120 times of a garment that a garment is used, and also on a local or Western world scale, it's 10 times. What if everyone could design garments that are used for this long? Also about other business models, we recently opened the Houdini Circle store where it's up to the user to decide, do I want to buy this because it's a product I will wear a lot of times, or do I maybe want to rent, subscribe, and care for my garment in other ways?
So again, looking at the assessment of these sorts of initiatives and the volume aspect of it, it's hard to fully quantify again exactly what sort of changes this makes to the impact. But we can say for sure that this sort of attempt impacts or decreases the pressure on all of the planetary boundaries. This is where we need to move, designing for longevity, designing for multifunctionality, and for garments being timeless and suitable for anywhere. That's where we need to go. And creating circular business models that even allow to use garments for even longer is even better. Because the elephant in the room is really the overproduction. If you look at the projection of the textiles industry, fabric production is estimated to continue to go up in just continue and continue. The same way as the great acceleration graphs that you may have seen. We see an exponential growth that people are assuming is what is to come. And in that, it doesn't really matter what fiber we choose, and it doesn't really matter the way we produce it. We need to lower that volume. We can't have an exponential increase regardless of our fiber choice.
And that brings us to the life or the lifestyle. And one initiative that Houdini have been working with is to live large with less challenge, to live a prosperous life, but with only 10 garments in your wardrobe. It's actually possible to go skiing, go to weddings, and go kayaking in only 10 garments. But it's also about open source. How can we leave something like a new innovation of fabric or a planetary boundaries report open source so that everyone can use it and to really push the industry forward? So in this sense, everything matters, even if it's not possible to measure or not.
Exactly. And there's a lot to leverage in this. If we can nudge and inspire mind shifts and cultural movements and changing behaviors, and by using open source knowledge and allowing the industry to adopt whatever you find, to develop it further and come back with a counter offer. We're going to do it like this. And you can grow and expand together and learn from each other. And that's really a way forward, because we have to do this together, and we have to use all of our collective minds to get there. So, in a nutshell, what we sort of conclude in the report, it's long, it has a lot of texts, it has more conclusions than this, so feel free to read it. But designing for a long and squiggly lifeline for your products, where they go on different journeys with different people and they experience things in a fun way, that's a way to think of moving forward. Don't mix, but match your materials so that we really can close those circular loops. If we mix fabrics, they're much harder to recycle. And stick to natural materials, so long as they are regenerative and long-lasting. So there is a complex equation there as well, where we see that the length of time that a garment lasts for is also key. Build relations with your suppliers, with your customers, with everyone you can engage with. Work with your stakeholders and push each other. Push each other's boundaries rather than the planet's. And continue to challenge, continue to inspire the world. And even if you're a small actor, which Houdini is in this big industry, continue to dare to be different, because you are making a change. And I think that's all.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for this journey. And I wanted to actually leave you with something that we can share this precious planet of ours. All life could prosper. It would be humanity's greatest achievement. I want you to live with that one, and as we go into the panel.
Thanks, guys. Malva, Marika, excellent summary of the report. And go ahead and read it. There's much more in the report than what we got here, actually. So, okay, I'm Fredrik Moberg. I'm the co-director of Albaeco, who helped Houdini to produce this report. I'm also working for the Stockholm Resilience Center as an advisor and researcher. And I'm going to have the great opportunity to lead this discussion panel. And sometimes when you're moderating a discussion panel, you know there's going to be a lot of talk, we're not going to solve anything. But this is a really dream panel. I think we can come up with some great solutions to like everything. So this is the dream team of all panels for sustainability. And I would like to start with Elin Frendberg. Please come up. You are the executive director of Fotografiska. You're the host here today. Elin.
Thank you.
And then Lisen Schultz, my colleague from Stockholm Resilience Center. Big applause. And Lisen is the deputy director of the Stockholm Resilience Center at Stockholm University. Hey, Lisen.
Hej Fredrik, hej Elin. Hej. Hej allihopa.
Nice to meet you. All right, and the next one is someone who is a former politician, an opinion leader, and you've seen him many times before. Anders Wikman, please, come on. Anders, nice to have you here, and you're an author, you're honorary president of the Club of Rome, etc., etc. And also part of the UN resource panel. We're going to talk more about that later on because it sort of aligns with the conclusions from the report as well, what we need to produce less and be careful with our material and resources. And then Eva Karlsson, please come up again. CEO. Hey, Eva.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Vilket gäng.
The CEO
Thanks.
of Houdini. This is the dream team. And we also, I hope, still have Johan Rockström, but online. Johan, are you still with us?
Oh.
Somewhere.
He's out there.
Somewhere.
He's out there. I can feel him. He will probably join us, I hope, soon, or not. We still have a dream team, a dream panel. Listen, being a scientist, Johan is talking about the corridor of life, buckle up. It is serious business. We know a great deal about the planet's boundaries, tipping points, etc. How do you deal with that at the Stockholm Resilience Center now? What is the sort of most urgent things you can do as a scientist and in leading a scientific center?
I think now it's very much about the response to that health check that Johan is providing and that he will be providing with colleagues every year from now on. And so we are focusing a lot more now on transformations and how can that happen and what happens with in the face of resistance and how can we work with just transitions and ensuring that we bring people along. In this massive shift that needs to happen so urgently and needs to be so well coordinated across the globe and between sectors and so on. So transformation is key. Another key concept for us is stewardship. It's around the regenerative aspects and actually working with nature and restoring what has been lost to the extent possible and so on. Moving, towards not only no harm, but actually having a positive contribution to life on Earth. And then the final thing I would say that's key to us is when it's going more directly into business and science interactions, is to understand how this health check that is sort of the aggregated level of the human impact on the planet, basically, how can you sort of trace that back to drivers of that, and how can you find ways of assessing the impact of an organization on that and the risk created by that. So we have a big program helping, for example, investors and capital owners to assess their portfolios in light of the planetary boundaries, so beyond the carbon tunnel vision that we often land in. So there's a lot of work going on at the center. We were actually 160 employees now working, and planetary boundaries has always been an important piece of our work, but I would say nowadays most of the work is actually going into understanding what can we do about this situation that we're in as humanity.
A lot of interesting things to take care of there, of course. And really interesting to sort of follow the money as well and tell them to deal with all the planetary boundaries, not only carbon. So thanks, Lisa. Anders, I mentioned briefly that you were part of the International Resource Panel, which is fair to say that it is almost an IPCC for resources and materials. Is that right?
Almost.
Almost. What is the difference?
It's a scientific panel of the same kind as the IPCC and the IPBS.
Yeah.
The difference is we are not anchored in an international convention, but we are working hard now to make that happen, because in our most recent report, Bend the Trend, which was launched about 2 months ago, we concluded that the main driver of all the problems we see inside the planetary boundaries context, the main driver is material consumption. We take out too much, we extract too much resources out of the earth in a way that is polluting, that is destroying, that is not regenerative. And unless we can balance that in the future and also make sure that, you know, the distribution of this material extraction is very uneven. My material footprint is, let's say, 20 to 25 tons aggregately per year. A citizen in a low-income countries may have a material footprint of 3 to 4 tons. That's why he or she is poor. So we have to raise the standard of living, and they need more materials of different kinds. Metals, minerals, food, biomass, and of course energy in different forms. But if they would end up at our level, the planet is toast. So we have to reduce our footprint step by step by meeting human needs in a more intelligent way. And Houdini is, of course, a perfect example, because the footprint from you compared to H&M or Zara or whoever is so little, and yet you provide or you meet people's needs, and also in a better way.
And desires.
And
desires,
yeah, exactly.
So this is very much in line. So this is very much in line with one of the key messages from the report, and that we need
but
to.
It's you know, and this has of course been said before.
Yeah.
But the difference is that this time it's a UN body, and we have some 50 governments in our steering committee, and I can tell you it was a fight to have acceptance for some of the messages. And I have been a policymaker, and I know that policymakers don't like to talk about material consumption and lifestyles. They don't want to touch it, freedom of choice, etc. But we have come to the conclusion that unless we start doing it in an intelligent way, and look both at business models, I mean, most business models are built on high throughput of materials. Yeah. The more you sell, the more you earn, the more revenue you have. So how do you change that? So it's not only us as consumers, it's also the companies who offer consumption and provisioning systems that are not sustainable.
And that's kind of what you're trying to do at Houdini, Eva, right? Is this easy? Is this an easy task to try to live within planetary boundaries and decrease consumption? How do you deal with this? Can you be profitable?
No, it's not easy, but it's not that hard either. I think that we hear a lot about there's so much innovation that needs to take place before we can move in the right direction, and that's not the case. There's everything we need, I would say, to transform. Like we talked about, and Malva and Malva mentioned the formula, the impact formula, looking at volumes. If we just, let's say and Malva already mentioned this, but let's say every apparel company would make products that last and that people want to keep, it would radically reduce the impact of the entire industry. like this. But it's not happening. And of course that has to do with the systems, the global system, the financial system, the legal system. There's a lot of things that are working against us. But only if we move forward and show that it's possible, I guess that then the policymakers have an opportunity to start looking at it and moving as well.
So you need some help from policy, but you can also help policy.
Yes, it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
A living system where everything needs
to...
it's
an ecosystem.
Support each other.
So if you were to mention one single thing that is the sort of biggest obstacles for working the way that you do, what would that be?
Maybe it's all those structures in a way, but I think the biggest obstacle might be our mind, our mindsets, where we take for granted everything that makes life possible and worth living. I mean, birdsong in the morning, we take it for granted. It's not for granted. And if we would take that, like acknowledge that we're part of the problem, first of all, and bring that love for the little things in life, bring that with us to work and live with that. I think that one way of doing it is having a smartphone, and you have a smartphone in every meeting, and you can have your kids on that screen, and remember that you have those kids. It might not be your own, somebody else's, somebody you love and care for, and remind yourself that that is important, maybe more important than moving to a new factory where there's a slightly lower price, but there's a negative effect in terms of transports. There's so many decisions to take that.
So some kind of mind shift there. It's not about here in
shift.
The mind, and that's a great segue for me to bring in you, Elin. We are here today. Why? What is the importance of the cultural sectors and museums when try to stick in the safe operating space and not transgressing planetary boundaries?
I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but I do think that art can play a tremendously important role here. As you said, our biggest obstacle is our mind, and art is transforming our minds into new places. And I mean, our imagination and our creativity and new perspectives is what we need in order to change this system. So I do think that art can play a role. Art is, can be as provocative as you want, and it doesn't have boundaries. So it's a very fantastic place to be when you want to change perspectives.
And you have an exhibition right now going on somewhere in the basement.
Yeah, just
Eva mentioned it briefly. Why should we go down there? What will happen to our minds?
Wow!
If we go down there?
So it's called Human. It's about humanity in different places in the world right now. So we have 12 different photographers there. It's a pre-picté traveling exhibition that has been to many places already globally, and it's just amazing to see the different perspectives that people have in their daily lives. So please see it.
Nice. Thanks. Listen, I know that the Resilience Center, because I happen to work there, we have also tried to sort of have those events and sort of collaborations where we try to merge art and science. Why?
Well, because this is an existential issue. It's about who we are as a species and a creature in this web of life, and that cannot only be addressed through scientific methods. You also need to engage with the humanities, with the arts, with social science and natural science, to both understand the situation and what it means for us, but also to enable action. So I can maybe just mention an example, even though it's a small one, but I've done this executive program for CEOs of large companies like H&M and Scania, Electrolux, other large companies, where we bring the CEOs together from these companies to be trained in resilience thinking, in biosphere stewardship, climate change, planetary boundaries, obviously, just transitions and so on. And there is a retreat in this program where you get really quite deep into both the challenges and how existential they are, but also looking for places of intervention. What is it that we can do in this room that no one else can do that would make a difference? And then actually on the second night of that retreat, I always bring in a surprise, which is the opera improvisers. Have you heard about them? It's a group that improvises opera. And it's incredible what they can do. They use words from of course the audience and the scenes, and then they actually perform real opera scenes. And there are only 3 people. The voice is incredibly loud. It's playful, and it's this combination of something, a very old tradition, opera, and quite conventional, and this play. So everyone laughs so hard, and you also get such a sense for the capacity of humans and the beauty that we have in our playfulness and our creativity, and that we can do these things like opera. To me, music is the reason for engaging with sustainability, because music is something we brought here, as a human species, and so with us there won't be, at least not human music. So
that's nice.
Yeah,
Anders,
just an example.
If I may add, I listened to Anders Hansen the other day about how our brain works, etc. And one of the things he emphasized was that don't believe or expect that people primarily will respond on rational arguments. They will not. They will respond more on emotions. So I think that's part of it. However much we say in terms of logic and rational arguments, it goes beyond many people. So you of course you need a mixture. The other thing, because you were very polite when you tried to explain what was difficult, but I would say that the logic in the business community and the way the economic model is designed is of course a terrible uphill battle for somebody like you, because it's very unlikely that you will have the same profitability, at least not in the short term. And I often remind people, I was in an energy conference in London a couple of years ago. I was on a panel, and I put the question to the audience. There were lots of oil and gas executives, and I said, why don't you use some of your enormous revenues and profits to invest in alternative energy and widen your business, going from being oil and gas companies to energy companies? Diversify your business. And then one guy stood up and he said, there are 2 reasons. One is, wind and solar and so on, that's small stuff, oil and gas. We drill at the ocean, thousands of meters, it's big thing. So it was very much a cultural issue, macho issue. But the other thing which was more important was, we have a return on investment normally of 25 to 30%. Wind and solar would never produce that. If they produce 5 to 10, that's maximum. And why should we? Why should we invest in something where the dividends are so much smaller? Our shareholders wouldn't accept it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to talk about the economic model. And it's not a question of right or left-wing policy. It's a question of how it's designed from the beginning by national economists, by economists.
Yeah. Macroeconomists.
Macroeconomists. And the design is wrong.
And the return of investment now for renewables is quite different, right?
Well, it's not 20%.
No, but it's getting there, right? Okay.
I don't think so.
Darn, I'm trying to bring up some hope here. We're talking about sort of emotions and scientific facts, and that's something we struggle with, of course, when in a science center and trying to communicate. And we know that sometimes emotions will eat facts for breakfast. But another emotion is hope as well, and I'm trying to give a bit of hope here.
Yeah.
Eva, I know you love to talk about hope. What gives you hope right now?
That it's possible, for sure, but I think back to this with the mindset. If there's anything that brings me hope and something that we've been exploring then in this report and in our work is how we can contribute to a mind shift. And not about telling people what they shouldn't be doing and so forth, but really redesigning so that we can offer more attractive solutions that just happen to be sustainable or circular or whatever. And you don't have to intellectually even care about it. You just end up there because it's attractive. I think that's a really exciting thing. But then mind shift. If there's a lot of things in the transformation that will require immense investments, infrastructure, and it will take time, and it also takes resources. But a mind shift, it can happen overnight. It can change everything. If we care about, the rest of the species, the quote that Malva shared, it would be great, humanity's greatest achievement to actually create a world where every species can thrive. If that becomes kind of, or just gratitude for that bird song in the morning, and taking that to work, I think it can shift things much faster than everything else. That brings me hope.
Thanks, Eva. Elin, is that something that Fotografiska is sort of actively working on? Are you here to bring some hope?
I mean, hopefully, yes. When we started 14 years ago, our vision was to inspire new perspectives for a more conscious world, and that is, I believe, that is what we do every single day. What we serve on the plates with our zero food mentality and a planet-based kitchen, what we show on our walls, the images, the photography, the themes that we choose. I think that definitely it's for us that's a little way of showing hope, definitely, and sorrow and despair and all the emotions. I mean, we have them all here. So, but I thought it was really beautiful in the report. You referred to not using the word roadmap, but change it to trail map. I thought that was so inspiring because it's very explorative. Like you don't have to know the exact way. Everybody doesn't have to be a follower and just follow the big road. It's all about exploring new ideas and new things and take some bets and fail. And that was so inspiring, I thought.
Thanks a lot. Time flies when you're having fun. I want to have some questions from the audience, and we also, I mean, if Houdini can't be profitable, there seems to be something wrong with policy, right? And we know that we have a big EU election coming up. So, and we happen to have one of the people sitting in the European Parliament in the House. So, Per, do you have a microphone for Per Holmgren? Why should we go vote in the election, and what is at stake? You're coming up behind me.
Thank you very much.
And you're a politician, so you can't talk for 10 minutes, but you can talk for 1.5 minutes, and you can even have my chair if you want to.
I think we've had a number of reasons why we should vote just this past hour, and I would really like to thank Eva and Houdini. It's so important with, the storytelling and the inspiration, and this is a perfect example that it is possible to change a business model, a new way of thinking throughout the whole system chain from production to consumer. And speaking about inspiration, of course, Johan Rockström and the Planetary Boundaries has always been such an important inspiration for me. I remember when the Planetary Boundaries were first published, it must have been roughly 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, correct.
You know what I did?
No.
I went to my boss. I was a weatherman way back then, and I said, I need to quit my job. I need to work full-time with sustainability and especially climate. Because way back then, 15 years ago, I realized that we were already then outside of the planetary boundaries, at least when it came to climate and a few of the other topics as well. But then imagine my surprise when I became a member of the European Parliament 5 years ago, and we're discussing in the Committee for Environment, and the Committee for Environment is, after all, maybe the most progressive committee in the European Parliament. And I hear colleagues from, I think, all of the other political groups saying, yeah, we need to remain within the planetary boundaries. They weren't even aware that we're already outside of it. And I think this is one of the most crucial storytelling things that we need to focus on, that we're already outside many of these planetary boundaries, but at the same time, with regeneration in different ways, not least agriculture and forestry, it is still possible to, at least towards the end of the century, become once again within the planetary boundaries. So I guess that's one of the main reasons why we should vote, to make sure that we connect science with politics.
Thanks a lot, Per. Remember to vote. When is the election? Remind us.
Well, you can vote today, you can vote tomorrow, but not later than Sunday the 9th of June.
Yeah, and it seems like the Swedes are taking these issues seriously, so we put climate high up on the agenda. So go and vote for someone who takes planetary boundaries and climate seriously. Yeah, there are many different parties. All right. Questions from you in the audience. You are so many, and we're going to have a mingle afterwards, and there will be plenty of time to discuss everything. But if we have a couple of questions from the audience, they are welcome. Malva, find someone. Yes, please. And please say who you are and try to be brief and have a clear question. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Sarah Nyberg. I'm working as a consultant at South Pole, helping companies taking climate action. And I actually did a bit research, like if any other companies have done this kind of planetary boundaries assessment. I did it around a year ago, and I kind of didn't find any other company which has done. There are many other similar things, but not framed as or similar to planetary boundaries assessment. Now, my friend told me about one other example in the UK, I think. But do you know about other companies doing this? And is there a framework to follow? Like, I guess you can companies can approach Albaeco, but is there otherwise some kind of standard being developed for this? I know about this science-based targets for nature, but yeah, that's my question to you.
Thanks. I mean, Lisen, you have met a lot of CEOs who have taken the course.
Yes.
What do they say? Do they work with the Planetary Boundaries Framework?
Well, it's true that there isn't a standard way of doing it, and I think it provides more an inspiration to look beyond carbon, to look at biodiversity and pollution and those other aspects. The work that is going on now in the Earth Commission and then the Science-Based Targets for Nature initiative is around trying to standardize that, but it's quite difficult. It's one thing with carbon emissions, quite easy to measure, not so easy, but at least you have one equivalent. For biodiversity, it's very, very localized. So I think the most important thing is to realize that fresh water and biodiversity and land use, those are all tied to the location. So you need to get data on the location. So there's a lot of work like that going on. We also have, I know one a former master student of us at the Stockholm Resilience Center who have looked into planetary boundaries use in business, who's in the room, and I don't know if you want to say something about your work, but I see her there.
Let's approach her during the mingle. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ylva, you can speak with Ylva if you would like to know, but we will do it during the mingle.
Yeah. See, Ylva, don't miss the opportunity to talk to Ylva. Anyone else? Eva, do you have any competitors or role models when it comes to doing planetary boundaries assessments?
And I'm not aware of. There's growing interest, so that's really positive. And to just expand our perspectives from carbon, like we said, and maybe not focus on measuring everything, but rather just having that as a mind map. What do we need to know in order to take a decision at work? That's how we use it most of the time, and then assessing as well, of course.
Yeah. One interesting aspect is that in the International Resource Panel report, we came to the conclusion that 90% of biodiversity loss comes from industrial agriculture, and that was most of it. A bit comes from forestry, and of course a bit from mining, but those are the three critical sectors for biodiversity. So if we can change the way we till the land. And regenerative agriculture is a very promising concept. Yeah. Then we would do a lot of good things. Yeah. So I think you have to really analyze where are the hot spots, so to say. And when we came to materials, we said, yes, steel is one, cement is one, ammonia is one, aluminum is one, plastics is one, textile is one, electronics is one. And then people say, but green steel will not solve the problem then. Well, Sweden produces 5 million tons of steel. And we have now an option, I guess, to maybe go from coal-based reduction of the oxygen in the ore to hydrogen. But that's 5 million tons. You know what the world production is? 1,900 million tons, and the half of it in China. So unless we start thinking of how the hell do we use steel, and do we need it every time? Can we substitute? This equation is very difficult because it will take a very, very long time to green production. Right. So to green production is important, but it's not sufficient.
First reduce, then.
First reduce.
But don't use his argument to not do green steel.
Yes.
No.
Instead of anything else. But I totally agree.
Both,
That's
right?
why volume is so important.
Yeah. The formula again. Can you export that formula to other companies as well in other sectors?
That was the intention when we did it, because we use it ourselves, but it was an easy way for us to kind of share that perspective, because there's a lot of focus on, adding a few % of circular fiber and not even designing a circular product with it, but just adding that so that you can talk about it. And that's not enough, of course. But can I comment on
yes, do that. And then
on
we have
profitability and stuff like that? It's maybe easier to take an organic tomato compared to a conventional tomato, where the conventional tomato has, probably killed some insects, at least disturbed the biodiversity system and land system, maybe even oceans. It's cheaper, even though it costs so much more in the total. And that is, a design flaw. It should be the other way around. So Per and other policymakers, we need to make the organic tomato the more affordable. And then the conventional chemically polluted tomatoes will be obsolete. We need to pivot away from the old and let the new then scale.
And the polluter pays principle has been around for a long time, but it's not really implemented, so there's a challenge, right? Thanks.
And what our
tomatoes.
2030 goal is to eliminate the extraction of resources. Yeah. We're thinking that it's going to be possible. It might not be possible in the timeline that we've set 2030, but we should be able to eliminate the need of extracting resources entirely, so that we only circulate what's already taken from the Earth's crust, and then adding to that regenerative renewables. That's the way to do it, and it should be possible. Yeah. But it's hard work. We need the support.
I must make a comment.
We have a short comment. Then we have a short comment. Then the last question from the audience.
Because I think we all agree that we are moving from combustion to electrification, and that makes a lot of sense. There are some sectors where it's very difficult, but it makes sense. But in order to do that, we need a lot of metals. And most of those metals have not been extracted yet. So we can't start recycling them and reusing them until they are part of the stock. And that's why it's also so important not to use too much, rather be very efficient in everything we do, so that we minimize the need for all these metals in batteries, etc. And then design it so we do exactly what you say, namely recycle and reuse and long product life.
Great, thanks. I love this. There's a lot of things going on here, but we have another question from the audience. Yes.
Yes, hey. Thank you. My name is Eric. I work with traceability in the textile industry. And my question is to Eva and Lisen. And Anders, you touched a bit about scalability and growth. And we see in textile industry a lot of companies striving for 20 to 30%, expecting 20 to 30%. Lisen and Eva, do you think these new circular business models will aggressively strive for 30% and take market shares from more unsustainable business models, or do you see these circular models settling to lower expectations of maybe 10%?
Dividends.
Who wants to start?
That's interesting.
Eva?
You can start. I can start.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think that this, first of all, circular business models is not going. It's not a silver bullet. If you design a product that people wear more or less every day, like the survey we did, the garment is used several times a week for many different activities over the time of at least 10 years. That makes sense then to own, maybe. Or at least have a lifetime lease on it. And then there are other products that you might need, or it's smarter for you to rent, and it's smarter for the planet as well that you rent it, because then you can share it with others. So a small wardrobe for Stockholm, for instance, like Houdini Circle. So it's not one single solution, but the holistic view can help guide us towards what the ecosystem should look like and what we should offer within that. And how, when it comes to scaling, circular needs to be everything in different ways then, and owning something can be circular if you care for it and repair it and then bring it back to us for recycling. But what else did I want to add? Maybe, do you have something and I can try to
Yeah, I
remember
can say
if there's-
something and then you can fill in. Well, I think that if we are going to move towards a more sustainable society, we cannot expect those kinds of revenues and profits and dividends like 30%. It's not realistic, really. And the challenge then, of course, is how can then those other things outcompete them? Because by definition they will grow faster. So then the only way of doing that is through regulation and the polluter pays principle and all of those things, that we cannot continue allowing organizations to make a profit at the expense of everyone else. And that can only be regulated through policy and so on. So I think that and we talk more and more about also the phasing out. Like we will not grow ourselves out of this situation just investing in what should grow. We also need to be able to talk about what we need to phase out and how to let go of those things, and how to also then take care of the people whose identity were maybe in those old systems and bringing them along into the new way of doing things. So that said, we also need to work from the here and now, and of course there will need to be we need to work on the shifting the economic system and the way it's operating, but we also need to work on within the system. So I think and we all have different roles to play there. So I think just act from where you are with what you can, and knowing what it is that you're striving for.
Thanks, Lisa. It's getting really warm in here.
Yeah.
We're going to
soon. I'm pretending I'm at a spa and this is a sauna and it's what I want.
So we need to soon sort of finish this panel, but there will be plenty of room to mingle and discuss afterwards. But I'm just going to give you all the opportunity to leave some key messages from this to the audience here, and also maybe if you can come up with a question you think they should discuss during the mingle. Elin.
Wow. During the mingle.
Yeah.
Invite art into your life. It really expands your perspective in so many ways, and you can try out new things, and getting new ideas, and ideas really changes the world in the end. So that's not a question though.
No, but something they can discuss.
How can you invite art into your life?
Yeah. How do you do that? That's a good question. So take notes. All right. Lisa?
Act from where you are, connect with others, and dream big.
And how can I dream big? Is that the question then?
Well, I thought we were going to give a message.
Oh, yeah.
I'm at spa, so it's going to take some time for me to
that was the first
through.
part. It was a two-part question. So that is key messages, but what do you think they should discuss?
I think they should ask each other questions about, what what makes you care, what makes your heart tick, and then work from there.
Really good one.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anders?
I think we all should help to strengthen what I would call the ethical base in society, because I think we have lost a lot over the last 10 to 15 years. And there are many reasons for that. Secondly, I would ask you all to help your neighbors and your friends understand the complexities and how everything is interconnected, because my experience after all these years is that you can say a lot about policymakers, and some are driven by weird ideologies, but most of them, I can tell you, most of them don't understand the system. They don't understand. So spend time helping people understand.
Thanks, Anders. Eva? The final words to you, Eva.
Well, I would say that to practice gratitude for the little things on a daily basis, I think that's important. To find the beauty of the small, the moments that you encounter, in nature especially. So if I would suggest a conversation, I would go to that guy over there, Johan and discuss and ask about sit spots and nature quests and reconnecting to nature for real.
All right. That's
You can do that alone as well, but Johan is the guy to talk to if you need guidance.
Step up, Johan.
Yeah. Wave, Johan. Good. Hey, Johan. Nice to meet you. Go talk to Johan. Discuss these topics during the mingle. And first of all, big thanks, big applause to the panel.
Yeah.
Thanks to Fotografiska, Houdini. Thanks to the presenters, Malva, Marika, Johan, wherever you are. So go mingle. Thanks.
Thank you.
Vad